Good evening. Hello. A very warm welcome to India Tonight. I'm Vikram Oza, and this evening, while we track the ups and downs in the domestic and global markets, we get you the lowdown on corporate earnings as well. But it's this military aircraft with shackled migrants that is brewing a storm in Parliament. So the question is, has India's Vishwaguru image taken a hit because of it? The government facing a tough task after those 104 illegal Indian immigrants have been deported from the United States in chains. They were shackled, with Prime Minister Modi now set to visit Washington soon. Is this a diplomatic embarrassment or just routine enforcement? Of course, all eyes, meanwhile, when you talk about rate action, all eyes are on the RBI. A liquidity crunch, slowing growth, that's fueling expectations of a rate cut. Now with the street betting on a 25 basis point reduction in interest rates in February, will the central bank blink or will caution prevail amidst global uncertainties? Also, in an exclusive interview, the Secretary of the Ministry of Electronics and IT is confirming that the components PLI scheme is going to roll out before the new financial year. Will this be the much-needed push for India's electronics manufacturing sector? So we've got lots of ground to cover on India tonight. Here are the headlines we are tracking on the show. Opposition MPs are questioning the government, alleging violation of human rights of the deportees. Foreign Minister Shankar saying that deportation is not new, but the government is in touch with the United States to ensure that deportees are not mistreated. Dalal Street expects the RBI to cut rates by 25 basis points on Friday, and we'll decode the impact of that possible move. In the Indian markets, we've seen the Nifty decline for the second session on the trot, mostly dragged by Trent and BEL. In the broader markets, mid-cap and small-cap indices have also snapped their two-session-long gaining streak. In earnings, Bharti Airtel's profits have broken all records. Net profit has come in at a whopping 14,781 crores in the third quarter, which includes an exceptional gain of more than 7,500 crores. The ARPUs, the average revenue per user, has skyrocketed to 245 rupees for Bharti Airtel. Still on earnings, State Bank of India's numbers largely meeting ET Now's poll numbers. Profit after tax has gone up 84% year-on-year, reaching 16,891 crores. The board of Zomato has approved the company's name to be changed to Eternal to distinguish between the app and the company.
हमारे हाथों में हथकड़ी, पैरों में हथकड़ी लगाकर खाना भी ऐसे ही एक लेस का पैकेट देते थे, एक जूस एयरपोर्ट पे लेकर गए, तो जहाज में हमें बैठा दिया, कहते हैं आप इंडिया जा रहे हो। फिर हमको 40 घंटे लगे अमृतसर एयरपोर्ट पहुंचने के लिए।
Whom you heard is one of the deportees who traveled on that C-17 US military aircraft. He was in shackles like the rest of the illegal Indian immigrants who were on board that flight. And India is asking why such an inhuman act by the United States, who India considers a very close friend. That military aircraft with 104 Indian deportees raising this political firestorm. It's clearly bad optics for the government and the latest diplomatic controversy for the Modi government to tackle. Opposition MPs lashing out at the government over the forced return of those illegal immigrants from the United States. They were shackled, restrained, sent back on an American military plane. And these deportations just come days before the Prime Minister's visit to Washington. So does this dent India's global positioning by the Modi government as a Vishwaguru? And will this event strain India-US ties? And pertinently, why is the US military being deployed for civilian deportations? What is the message that Donald Trump is sending out to Prime Minister Modi, whom he calls a good friend? Foreign Minister Shankar has spoken about this in Parliament. He's defended India's decision to allow that military aircraft to land, and he's calling it nothing new, insisting that the process of deportation is in line with standard procedures. But does that explanation hold water? Well, let's just listen in as far as what our guests have to say. With the kind of optics and the defense that the Foreign Minister is putting out, it has evoked strong reactions across the spectrum. And joining us to debate the issue tonight is political commentator Sanjeev Srivastava to understand the potential political fallout for the Modi government. And with him is Madhav Das Nalapat, the foreign policy expert who joins us regularly on India Tonight. He's also vice chair of the Manipal Advanced Research Group. And he speaks on what this means for India-US relations. Also with us this evening, Air veteran Varsha Kukreti. She joins our panel, a squadron leader with the Indian Air Force. And she'll tell us about the unusual role of military aircraft in this deportation operation. Thank you all for joining us on this panel discussion and this debate that we have. Sanjeev Srivastava, I don't know if you've been tracking social media. There is clear outrage over Trump's treatment of deported Indian immigrants. As a political party, the BJP has always prided itself on improving India's global stature. But does this episode now, with images of shackled Indians, really shatter its Vishwaguru narrative? Sanjeev.
Well, Vikram, like you were just saying, that it is definitely very bad for optics. And it doesn't reflect very well on the Vishwaguru or the larger-than-life persona which BJP supporters like to project to the Prime Minister. But having said that, the very fact that they are illegal immigrants being deported back, it kind of sums up the entire thing. And if what Foreign Minister Jaishankar has said in the Parliament today, that it is standard procedure, that other than women and children, that's how all illegal immigrants are sent back or deported back from US, then how do we really expect that an exception will be made for India? The fact is that even the foreign minister is trying his best to not talk about the US behavior, describing that as a standard practice, but talking about, and rightly so to some extent, I think, of coming down heavily on illegal immigration and those who are involved in this kind of trafficking. So, yes, very bad optics.
Very bad optics, Sanjeev, but like you said, the expectation is from a good friend, Sanjeev.
There are so many people being fooled by these so-called touts and travel agents and people who are trying to send people to US and Canada.
Yes. So that remains the other piece for the government to be able to track and get to the bottom of. But when you say that an exception cannot be made, when we talk about close India-US ties, is this in line, according to you, Sanjeev, of two countries that have very close friendship ties?
I very honestly, despite Mr. Jaishankar saying it's routine practice and it's always done like this, I would be very interested to know and see, because seeing is believing, if say French or English illegal immigrants are treated the same way.
Right.
The fact is, if they are, then we should shut up. If they are not, then we have reason to protest. I don't know the truth. I really don't know the answer. Our illegal immigrants of developed world being sent back or deported back by the US.
Yes.
Because with Trump,
yes,
everything new.
But let me cross-check with our foreign policy expert, Madhavdas Nalapat. You know, could an exception have been made for India with countries like what Sanjeev is pointing out? If it was France or the United Kingdom, would such an act be committed by the United States where you sent back deportees in shackles? Mr. Nalapat.
Look, that is standard operating procedure, and it has been, frankly, going on since 2009. The Obama administration was quite tough on such a procedure, on the SOP. The Biden administration was relatively much more relaxed on the SOPs, but Trump has decided to double down on the SOPs, which is the polar opposite of the Biden administration. So let me say, quite frankly, that this is standard operating procedure.
Right.
And so far as criminality is concerned, the minute you cross into the United States, you are technically committing a criminal act.
Right.
And please, let's not forget the broader context. These, gangs that basically operate this donkey route. The fact is, many of these gangs are linked to terror, they're linked to narcotics, they're linked to Hawala. They're a grave national security threat. And now a large number of Chinese illegals have crossed into the US.
Indeed.
A large number of religious fanatics have crossed into the US from parts of Asia and North Africa. So frankly, that is why Hegseth is using military aircraft, because he's looking at security in a broad perspective.
Yes.
Having said that, I want to say that definitely it's horrible optics, not as much in India, but about India.
Yes.
But frankly, in India, about the United States.
Yes.
These are essential partners.
Yes.
They are linked together in the Indo-Pacific, and quite frankly, this kind of thing will turn a lot of people off.
Right.
They don't know about these
So
donkey
very bad
roads.
optics. There's
They
no
don't
taking
know
away
about
from
the
that. And like you're saying, Mr. Nalapat, it is very important that these donkey roads and something that has been happening over a period of time, we need to get to the bottom of, and one wonders why we haven't been able to nail that. But meanwhile, the defense, like both Sanjeev and you, Mr. Nalapat, are pointing out as far as standard operating procedures, was reflected in what defense the foreign minister has offered in Parliament as well. Let's take a moment and just listen into what he said.
We were the people who verified the nationality. We were the people who gave the aircraft clearance for the flight to know. Whichever aircraft comes in, it is under the authority of the ICE. The procedure, whether it was a military aircraft, whether it was a chartered aircraft, was exactly the same. We do not, sir, have data on illegal immigrants, and the issue about student visas being cancelled does not apply to immigrants. We also know that 5 to 7 times that number came back in 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So let us not make out as though this is something which is a new issue. This is an issue which was happening earlier. They have been given instruction to sit with every one of the returnees, find out how did they go to America, who was the agent, how did this illegal industry happen, how can we take precautions so that this does not continue. We have been informed by ICE that women and children are not restrained. We are, of course, engaging the US government to ensure that the returning deportees are not mistreated in any manner during the flight.
So in response to the bad optics, now we've heard and seen the foreign minister offer defense. But how palatable is that? Varsha Kukreti, at the heart of it is why the US is using military aircraft instead of civilian planes for this kind of deportation. Does this seem normal to you?
My take on this is that military aircraft have been used for all such kind of operations, even not only for deportation, but for rescue operations in which India also took part. Most of the time, we are sending our military aircraft only to evacuate people from there. However, I, being a veteran, I totally understand it is very uncomfortable. The feeling if you are in chains, you feel like a prisoner of war, and your crime has not been, there is no really serious crime which you have done. So what they could have done was to charter an aircraft, because any government which uses a military aircraft has to pay. There is a book adjustment. I'm a logistics officer, so I understand that if government hires your any military aircraft also, they'll have to pay for it. So Mr. Donald Trump has done this only for a show off. Basically, he's making a point that this is the way I'm going to deal with the immigrants who are illegal.
Yes.
So basically, that is the main point. However, payment-wise, he will have to pay the chartered flight also the same and military flight also the same.
But squadron
and
leader
when
Kukreti,
we evacuate people,
yes,
we have a very good feeling.
Sure.
But in this same aircraft is used, but it has a very bad feeling.
It has a bad feeling. There's no taking away from that. But when you talk about standard operating procedures, how is the military supposed to treat civilians traveling on a military aircraft?
As I told you, there have been times when we have evacuated people from Ukraine and other countries, Mali and all. We've used a military aircraft.
No,
So
no,
we
but how are they supposed to be treated? These civilians who travel on military aircraft on such operations, yes, they were deportees, yes, they were illegal, but how are they supposed to treat these people? They are civilians at the end
even
of the day.
for a POW, you are aware they have rights. So these were normal civilians. They should have been given proper food, and they, in no case, they should have been in chains and shackles.
Right. And
That is not
that's exactly
the.
what the opposition is saying as well. And Priyanka Gandhi has said this in Parliament. In fact, I'll ask our producers to play out what she has said about this and what she's really asking for in terms of why a plane wasn't sent to get these deportees back as well, something that she raised in Parliament.
मैं ये कहूँगी कि बहुत बातें की गई कि मोदी जी ट्रंप जी बहुत अच्छे मित्र हैं और मोदी जी ने ऐसे क्यों होने दिया? क्या हम अपना जहाज नहीं भेज सकते थे उनको लेने के लिए? इस तरह से क्या इंसानों के साथ बर्ताव किया जाता है कि उनको हथकड़ियाँ पहना के, बेड़ियाँ पहना के भेजा यहाँ पे? उनको जवाब देना चाहिए, प्रधानमंत्री जी को जवाब देना चाहिए. ये कोई तरीका है क्या?
Mr. Nalapa, do you agree with what Varsha Kukreti is saying, that these civilians should not have been brought in shackles? Even a country like Colombia refused to allow shackled deportees on military flights. There were repercussions, of course, on Colombia. Tariff hikes were slapped by the Trump administration. Yet, do you think that Delhi could have taken a firmer stand over here? We seem to have cleared this flight without any reservation.
Look, if you're a law-abiding country, this is the law of the United States. You go by the law. And as has correctly been said by our Air Force veteran, the law is very clear that military aircraft can be used. And as I said before, Secretary of Defense believes that this kind of criminal gangs who are sending these people across, many of them in Canada, for example, they're either indoctrinated or pretend to be indoctrinated in very harmful ways, very harmful to India. So they are a grave security threat to India, and they could emerge as a grave security threat to the United States also.
Right.
And that is why they have used military aircraft. But yes, I would again repeat that it is extremely bad optics where the Indian public is concerned, and the United States, specifically the government of Donald Trump, is concerned. And I think care should have been taken to have better optics. These optics are absolutely terrible, and they basically help those forces who would like India and the US to have bad relations. And frankly, they, if I may say so, that will be to the benefit only one country, and that is China.
Right, right. So I'm going to come to you about how this affects Indo-US ties. But Sanjeev, since we're talking about pure optics, how much of a low has the government hit with the landing of that military plane with Indian deportees in shackles? Does the fact that the government gave clearance to this kind of military flight make the optics worse for the BJP and the government?
Yeah, I think all of us are saying it's bad optics. But will it really affect Indo-US relations?
How does it affect it is the question now.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the bad optics, how far can it go? Because we're talking about the opposition now weighing heavily while Parliament is in session.
So the opposition will make full use of this issue. See, with Trump, you shouldn't expect any quarters, no decency, no nicety. And if at all there is any constituency he would like to pander to, it is to his constituency, his support base in US. He is frankly least bothered about what the Indian constituency thinks and what effect will it have for the government here. We all know Trump, how he thinks, and he has proved it amply. So his constituency will be very happy that this is the way he was so tough on illegal immigrants in the run-up to the presidential election.
Yes.
And walking the talk by sending out people like this. Now let's just take another scenario. If, like Mr. Nalpat is saying, some of these were criminals or hardened criminals, I don't know. Then what if they accident without chains? What if somebody decides to hijack the plane? I'm just playing the devil's advocate.
Yes, correct.
But the most important point, which I would like, is which I mentioned earlier also, I would be very keen to see if Trump and the US administration has the guts to send not just French or British people like this, illegal immigrants, but let's say what do they do with China?
How important, I just want to ask you one thing, Sanjeev. I just want to ask you one thing.
Can
If
they
now there are going to be more deportees and there are several more illegal immigrants, and this could be just
Can-
a case in
can-
point, we're just talking about 104 over
Vikram,
here. So,
can they-
Sanjeev, the next
can they-
flights, would they be in a similar fashion? Will shackled immigrants, Indian illegal immigrants, still emerge from US military planes?
So the bigger question is, will shackled Chinese and Russian illegal immigrants emerge like that? That is the real proof of the pudding is in eating. That's where we'll know where India stands on the global stage. It's fine to say SOP, standard operation, but if the rule of law is to be applied equally to each country, then we have no right to object.
Let
But
me
if
ask Mr. Nalapad, does he expect that? Mr. Nalapad, how important will it be for the US if you're talking about great friendship with India, and this is what we are seeing at the end of the day, then how is maybe the Chinese kind of deportation exercise likely to look? That's the question that Sanjeev is raising.
Look, as Sanjeev has very correctly said, it needs to be on similar lines. They need to be handcuffed. They need to be shackled. They need to be given some lime juice or whatever, after boarding and nothing after that. So if that happens, then yes, definitely the SOP is being maintained. But if they are treated in a differential way, if you treat an enemy with consideration and a friend in this manner by basically shackling its citizens and treating them like hardened criminals.
Yes.
I'm very sure very few of these people are hardened criminals.
Yes.
There are countries that send across hardened criminals willfully to the United States.
Yeah.
A few countries
Right.
that are geographically close to the United States.
Yes.
But certainly India is not at all part of that. And any United States intelligence officer would come to that conclusion.
But wasn't it
I'd like to
imperative,
say
Mr. Nalapa, that India should have done its thorough probe into these internal gangs which do this kind of illegal deportation, this illegal migration? And that is the troubling point, why we don't have data on migrants and why we haven't been able to get to the bottom of this issue since it's been happening for such a long time. Whose responsibility is that?
Look, there's no question that this is a problem, and that's a valid question that you're asking. This has been going on record in the sense of these illegal migrants coming back to India since 2009 under multiple administrations in India and in the United States. So very definitely, at least better late than never.
Yes.
It's important to track them because these are individuals who are engaged not only in ferrying illegal migrants,
Yes.
but in narcotics, in terror
Yes.
activities, and in various other criminal acts. And they link up with criminal gangs in Canada. They link up with criminal gangs in the United States. So the whole thing is one, or with or Mexico, or
So
wherever.
you think
they
there
are,
needs to be a joint
sending
exercise
from.
to kind of plug the holes as they were?
I think it's very necessary.
Right.
And I think that's something where the opposition also needs to join hands, the government.
Yes,
There
yes.
are issues that need to be completely, bring the opposition and the government together. And I believe this is one of those issues.
Meanwhile, Mr. Nalapa, the government is saying that they're engaging with the US to prevent the mistreatment of deportees in the future. Is that just diplomatic lip service, or do you see any real leverage happen now that the Prime Minister is going to have that meeting with Mr. Trump?
Look, Vikram, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. My expectation is, frankly, that if a crackdown takes place on these illegal agencies, and in that, and of course, one good thing, the government of India is very clear that they have to verify the Indianness of every single illegal sent back here. Many Pakistanis and Bangladeshis claim to be Indians when they're actually Pakistanis and Bangladeshis. Every one of the people coming back are verified to be Indian citizens with family in India. So we'll know, but definitely from a geopolitical point of view, it would be advisable for the US administration to understand that the democracy, public opinion counts, and public opinion will turn extremely hostile to the Trump administration in a way which is the opposite of what it has been
Yes.
so far.
Yes.
So I do believe there's a very strong geopolitical case for Donald Trump in the interest of the United States
Yes.
and in the interest of security of the Indo-Pacific to ensure that this kind of optics
Yeah.
is not there in
Right.
future.
Right. Even if it is the kind of messaging that we think that Trump is putting out, it's a deportation, it's creating a diplomatic dilemma. And this debate over dignity is something that is not ending tonight. As far as India tonight is concerned, what is coming through in the discussion is that this is more than just a bureaucratic procedure. It raises questions about India's global standing, the use of military force in civilian matters, and the balance of power in Indo-US relations. As the Modi government now defends its handling of that situation, the opposition, of course, is smelling an opportunity. And now with Trump's hardline immigration stance unlikely to soften, the question is, how will India navigate future deportations without compromising dignity, without compromising on diplomacy? And that's where we leave it. Thank you, my panelists, Sanjeev Srivastava, Madhavdas Nalapat, and Varsha Kukreti. Thank you for sharing your points and perspective with us this evening on India Tonight. We're still tracking all the developments that are taking place, and right now we are very focused on what the RBI could do. As far as liquidity is concerned, we're seeing a crunch. Growth is slowing down. So now the question is, will the RBI blink? The markets are expecting a 25 basis point rate cut. Will that come through? My colleague in our Delhi studio, Sumita Karir, taking the show ahead and discussing this right after we return from a short break. Do stay with us.